What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Split Screen D&D, the show where we are attacking all things Dungeons and Dragons from both sides of the screen. Ooh, a deadly arcane riff.
A bardic.
Bardic. Oh, Jesus.
I love bards.
My name's Tom Quinn, resident dungeon master here at Modern Myth.
And I'm Josh Winans, resident player, character, and lover of bards.
He is. He does love bards.
I love bards.
He does love bards. And that will actually be a little bit applicable to this episode.
A little.
Well, a lot applicable, but I'm going to have a few things to say on that.
I'm sure you are.
No, this episode is actually coming courtesy of a commenter here on YouTube and a subscriber. My apologies if I'm doing any mispronunciation here, but that would be on the YouTube side. That's going to be Jay Frazier. But actually, I originally met via the Twitter side, which is Maple Dragoon. Wrote in the comments, requested an episode on the Arcane, which is such an exciting and pretty broad,
pretty
topic,
darn broad topic.
But some specific questions regarding some of the systems.
Okay.
So I think we're going to kind of try to start broad,
Okay.
and kind of work into kind of the more narrow focus of kind of the systematic implementation of the Arcane in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a reasonable?
Let's try. Like
attack?
you're saying, this is. We got to be careful not to go down too many rabbit holes. Or this could be a 2-hour episode.
Arcane it really is actually a cool. It seems like a very specific thing to hone in on.
Yes,
but it is I would say one of the more complex systems in Dungeons and Dragons, and it's just one of the coolest fucking systems in culture. Period.
Yeah.
And the beauty is you don't even have to say pop culture. I mean, literally, you can go back as far as humans have been putting words on stone tablets or parchment or whatever. You know, I mean, there's been mention of the arcane, mention of magic,
shaman-like people.
Yeah.
And absolutely. But they were all taking drugs. But that's
shouldn't we all be doing it?
Why is there not a character class that uses drugs to get
kind of a psychomancer, kind of a
taps into?
You know what? I like that. Hey, and I know there's a few people out there via Twitter who are actively building new subclasses on a regular basis and releasing them.
Go.
Consider that. I'd love to. I'd love to see
druid subclass maybe, or
I actually think it would be a great little twist on the. What is it? Circle of Spores.
Oh mushrooms. Absolutely.
Anyways, like we were just talking about, we got to be careful about going down too many rabbit holes.
We just already went down one. But that's a good idea. I like that one.
Yeah. No, but so I think the place I wanted to start is actually dialed a little ways back, even from Dungeons and Dragons itself. Now, bear with us. We're going to get there. But I really just think the Arcane, because it does, I mean, there's something in our DNA that loves this idea of channeling an energy that is beyond some people's grasp. And we were talking about this before. Is it simply just a manifestation of intelligent people who are writing these stories, who are going like, I may not be the strongest, but someday I'll ignite you in flame. I like, what is it? Like, it's kind of a nuts concept to think that our primitive minds were conceptualizing cool ways of reaching through the veil and injecting into a space a power that is beyond mortal control. What?
Sorry, all I could think of when you're saying is, I don't know, you remember that LARP guy who's like, fireball, fireball, fireball. Anyway,
I'm gonna toss that in.
Tossing that in. Yeah. But why do humans get so fascinated with magic? It's, I think, from our history as a species, there's so many fantastical things that happen on this crazy Earth, and we're starting to figure these things out. But 2,000 years ago, they really didn't have a lot of answers.
Yeah.
So how are you going to answer these questions that you have no way of? You'll create a story.
Right.
And
I think it's actually telling, as you're saying that, I'm thinking it's telling that so many manifestations of magic start in that evocation elemental space, because I think probably, so much of that does hearken from a place where we were going like, volcano, crazy magic,
Right.
lightning, crazy magic. You know,
Right. You toss a virgin into a volcano to appease it. I mean, that doesn't. I mean,
yeah,
that's kind of crazy.
yeah.
Or
Now,
is it the most? Maybe we should get back on that. Maybe we need to start sacrificing virgins again. I don't know.
well,
The world is going crazy.
I'll sacrifice you any day, my friend.
Oh.
But it's Tuesday, and I know you're not. So, no. I think let's dial in a little bit into. So
Yeah.
I do think, like, again, the arcane is such a cool topic because it is so entwined with storytelling. Period. I mean, it's just been no doubt at some point someone sitting around a campfire eons ago was explaining the cosmos, explaining this rolling thunderstorm that's rolling through that's moving across the countryside and invoking the arcane. It's awesome that we haven't dispensed with that, despite the fact that now we know precisely why lightning occurs. We know why volcanoes occur.
Right.
But in our storytelling, it hasn't diminished our love of the arcane at all. So let's zoom in a little bit to more, instead of broad all of existence arcane.
Right.
Is there, in pop culture, is there a exemplification of magic that just is just like
the sweet spot?
That's what magic is. It's that right there.
Nothing comes to mind. Because you asked us earlier. Nothing I can think of. I enjoy bits and pieces of certain things. I really enjoy the Wheel of Time. Their magic system is really interesting, and they actually really flesh it out.
I actually think, in terms of the series, it was one of the series that really, I think, at least the initial introduction of magic, of the arcane, didn't pull its punches. Like, it was powerful. It was devastating. And I think so many times, especially when you see a Dungeons and Dragons licensed film or something that should be licensed but just kind of snuck on in there.
Those are great films.
So many times the wizard, and actually I'll even say the Lord of the Rings franchise. I mean, honestly, if you were purely based on what you see in Lord of the Rings, going to go, who's the most outwardly powerful character? I mean, we know Gandalf is powerful, but what is the display of arcane energy that makes you go, holy crap, magic is powerful? There's not.
It's very subtle in Lord of the Rings. And they never really go into it.
Right.
At least,
and I think so many exemplifications of magic, whether it's through a low special effects budget or through like wanting to take that subtle tact. But I do think Wheel of Time, the series, really did capitalize on, like, okay, magic is a thing that,
and magic's almost its
things
own
up.
character in the Wheel of Time. And like,
That's a great way of thinking about it. Yeah.
And like Harry Potter, it's a magic wand, and you say you speak Latin, and magic happens. But that's not the focus. The focus isn't on the magic; it's the development of the characters.
Yes.
You know, so like, that's why I think most people treat it as, is that magic isn't a character; it's just a tool, the Force. You know, God, why did he try to explain with midi-chlorians? I'll never understand. But
but interestingly enough, I actually think that the Force is a pretty good representation of the arcane as something tangible out in the. It's called the Force. I mean, it's something out there that you can interact with, and that's actually not a bad segue into kind of the Dungeons and Dragons space as well. So it's interesting because I do generally, when I think about, like, you know, the most powerful wizard in all of the Forgotten Realms. Ooh,
I forget his name. There was actually a dude.
There's probably the title has been handed from.
I can't remember because this. Anyway, I won't go down. Well, I will. This is Arcane because we're now capped at 9th level spells. But this wizard originally could go past it, and then the gods said no more.
And they were like,
no more.
No,
he almost ripped apart reality. Sorry, bud.
So, but I think that the cool part is, and I guess we should define in this space, what exactly we mean by magic in Dungeons and Dragons. And I guess I will define what I mean by it.
Yeah, please.
And I think we're going to be in the same space because we play at the same table, and we
pretty much agree on everything.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to disagree. We'll wait till we get to the bards. We're going to disagree on some things.
Oh, thank you so much. Why do you take away everything? Swear to God.
No, but we're not, because I think actually when you're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, so much of what magic means depends on your setting, depends on your timeline within that setting. And now, when I think of Dungeons and Dragons, just because this is home for me, when I think of Dungeons and Dragons, Forgotten Realms is Dungeons and Dragons.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of people out there who are going, "You son of a bitch! That's not where Dungeons and Dragons." Cool, and that's the thing is, what I like about Dungeons and Dragons, what I like about TTRPGs, is everyone's got their home and everyone's got. When I say magic, the system they think of, they've got. But just so everyone at home is aware, when I'm thinking about magic, I'm thinking about Forgotten Realms.
Okay.
I'm thinking about Mystra having instantiated the weave, for people at home, effectively let's call it a more refined blanket layer of arcane energy
that's all around you
that can be
manipulated
by mortals, whereas raw magic is everywhere, but is just far too volatile to be engaged with. But Mystra, being the goddess of the arcane or of magic, has kind of cultivated this much as a deity may cultivate for their farmers wheat or what have you. She has made this resource available. So this is not in the 4E space of Mystra is dead and there are spell scars everywhere and again,
which is super interesting.
It is. The
I
spell
think
scars
4E has some cool stuff, and that's cool.
There's tons of cool lore stuff, but just so again, because you could say magic and we could start talking way past each other if we're not thinking about roughly the same space.
Mystra,
is that a reasonable space to be talking about?
That's what I know it as too, especially in the world of D&D. So I'm down in there with you.
Yeah. So I think and what I think is really cool about that system is one. It is kind of in the same way that you might say the Force. The weave is out there. I don't think the weave has ever come up at our table. It's not a thing that it's like it's required that you're engaging with this, but in kind of the rules as written lore.
Yeah.
The weave is out there for those who are inclined to invest themselves in study or have an innate ability to interact with the weave.
And I'm sure if Ariel started asking questions about it, because Ariel's our wizard, I'm sure you could go down the road. She's never really wondered. She's always just been like, oh, I have this cool, super awesome ability.
Right. Well, and I think it's very fitting for Aster's character, albeit she's a wizard, her subclass actually has kind of put her in this weird
we talked about this
warlock sorcerer feel space. I'd say closest to sorcerer. It's more of an innate spellcasting ability.
Right.
But she's
a super genius, but yeah.
But it's a deal where I don't think her character really is all that invested in why she can do what she can do.
No.
Especially because it's not paramount, whereas many of the wizard arcane traditions would require, or wizard in general requires that you are investing a tremendous amount of study. You must understand what the weave is. You must understand how to interact with it and practice doing so.
So the classic old man with the big white beard, it takes that amount of time.
A red-haired teenage prodigy.
She's a prodigy.
She's a Mozart. She's a Mozart. But so I think that is a really cool space. I like that there is something tangible to interact with. I think I like that about arcane systems in general. When we're talking about the thematics,
yes,
that it's it's not inherently. It is a resource to be tapped into. It's not necessarily something that's internalized. It also makes a fair bit of sense, anyways, from a multi-classing perspective. Why, if there's something out there and someone wants to invest themselves in reaching towards it, eventually that they may be able to grasp that. As a player, though, talk with me
one of those.
About So you're multi-classing the sorcerer.
Yes,
but you're also
Paladin sorcerer.
Yeah.
Who would have thought the min-maxer would have gone Pally sorcerer?
Who would have thunk it?
You mean I get more spell slots?
Spell slots to smite people with? But I guess so you're a half caster, and I definitely want to delineate, because we could have a whole conversation on the other sources of power.
Right, divine nature.
Now,
Absolutely.
I do think actually, and it depends on iteration or addition, I should say, that in many regards, the divine spells are simply arcana that's been
Gifted to you by the
gifted
goddess
to you
or
by
God,
your
yeah.
god or goddess.
That's how I see it too.
But for the purpose of this conversation,
Yeah.
there's enough to be said just in the purely arcane sphere.
Yeah.
But talk with me a little bit about kind of whether you want to talk about lore, whether you want to talk about kind of the implementation. I know you're familiar with both the kind of the full caster side of implementation and the half caster.
Right.
What are your thoughts as far as pros and cons for those systems and the lore that kind of scaffolds them up? And then like I think we can start getting into the nuts and bolts of the way that this plays out at tables.
Oh my goodness. The pros and cons of Magic?
Well, the pros and cons of the way in which 5th edition has you utilize Magic.
I like it. I do. Because of spell slots. And you have if there's a con, spell level and spell slot. You should have called them two different things, Wizards. That is really confusing especially for new players. Like, what's my spell level? How many spell slots do I have? Like, Ariel gets those confused all the time.
I just have never understood why they didn't just attribute spells with the level at which you get them. Like, instead of making it a first level spell, I know that you'd have to graft things a little differently, and there might be some stop gaps kind of
stuff.
in there.
Yeah.
But
especially multi-classing.
Especially
if that's what we get right there. Is you multi-class.
I could see some issues there, but I definitely, I've worked with a number of our full casters who ran, into that headspace of like, oh, it's a 3rd level spell. Why don't I have it at 3rd level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
like,
that's what Ariel says all the time, like that kind of idea. She's especially at the beginning. So I think that's an odd logistics. Maybe you can come up with different terminology for that. I don't know. But the pros of Magic is you are harnessing intangible, really an intangible force to manipulate to make fantastical things come into reality.
Yo, definitely.
So there are so many spells that are just unbound by, you are limited by your creativity, and maybe like you have some limitations there. But it's just, if you want to be a creative player, be a freaking arcane, just be a wizard. Holy crap.
I love that you touched on that, because I think few classes can express as much utility and really I would say utility and creativity are almost interchangeable in this context. As the full casters who are again, you're simply getting access to more spells than you could possibly sling fiery things at enemies. I mean, eventually you go like, well, I've got all of those fiery burn my enemy spells. What else should I get? And eventually you just stumble your way into utility. And the thing is that I think a seasoned player really will begin to look at the spell list and go, holy crap, I can't even conceive of a class that could be better prepared for more possible situations than a wizard who knows how to prepare their spells effectively.
Right, and I can give some, as a player, highly recommend to have, I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, pre-prepared like spell books. Like, oh, today's going to be combat day. Boom, I have my pre-prepared combat.
I love that.
And then today's going to be a social, boom, or today's going to be an exploration. And you can switch it up, of course, but just have like, I'm going to want fireball. You're just going to want it. Or
DM pro tip, sell the day as being a social day, so your wizard improperly prepares their spells, then have someone kick the door in and roll fucking initiative.
Actually, that's not, but that's because that maybe, I mean, there's some standbys. I don't think Ariel never doesn't have, wow, double negative, fireball prepared. But yeah, there's...
Wait a minute.
What?
The single most broken spell in all of Dungeons and Dragons.
It's not broken.
Literally, since it was instantiated,
it's not broken. So yeah, when you get it, it's overpowered, but then it settles down, and it's a while before you get something else that compares with it.
Yeah, well, I think actually that's why Fireball has garnered. It's not. I mean, it is. I mean, it's a milestone as
I think
as a wizard.
the Wizards people have come out and say, yeah, Fireball's really good when you get it, but it's such an iconic spell.
Yeah.
They wanted it to
No,
feel
I get that. I think the impetus is then on the design, the creative team to go, can we do anything cool at 4th and 5th level? Like, can we, you know what I mean? And that's the juxtaposition, I think. It's not so much like Fireball is awesome.
It is.
But it would seem less awesome if you were equally excited to get a 4th level spell that even came close to comparing. A 5th level spell that came close to comparing.
Yeah. Which I don't know if you're arguing. That actually, to me, it's good. It's good pacing because level 4 does have some awesome shit. Level 5 does have some awesome shit.
Well, I mean, I feel like I would have to actually reference to get the exact levels. There is a dry span where specifically now again, if we're talking about the whole breadth of what a wizard can do, yes, every level there's something awesome you can do.
That's the thing.
But when we're talking about fundamentally pumping damage into baddies in front of you,
no. Yeah.
You got like 4 levels worth of spells before you go like,
Ariel's in
now I'm really excited again about destroying
I forget
baddies.
what the next one is. Is it Disintegrate? I think it's the next big one for her.
Disintegrate's gross.
It's so gross. I'm excited for her to get that.
You almost got busted with that Disintegrate.
I almost did until you had someone sacrifice themselves for me.
Yeah, Alpha. You never even got Alpha's name.
Oh, really? His name was Alpha?
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. He died.
I know.
Whatever.
You know.
I think I stabbed the shit out of him.
Reek
too.
was the name of your companion who.
Reek?
Reek. I don't know if you remember him.
I don't remember Reek.
Well, he was with the party for 10 levels and then perished.
Huh, I don't even remember that guy. Anyway, just kidding. Reek was like Kel's best friend. But man, I got off topic. So casters versus full casters. That's an interesting thing that you brought up. Because half casters are paladins, rangers, and artificers. And I don't know much about artificers. They're kind of new. But as a paladin, because I have a little bit of experience in that realm, I use my spells are pretty much, there's like a couple damage things like Wrathful Smite. If you're a fucking paladin, get Wrathful Smite. Even in the last little bit of D&D, being able to make creatures afraid of you is baller.
Pretty gnarly.
Pretty gnarly. But like most of my stuff I have is utility. Zone of Truth is my new favorite spell. Holy crap.
Zone of Truth has pulled its weight for you guys. Oh. And I don't want to go too far down because we're getting into the divine sphere here. I don't want to go too far.
Fair enough. Okay.
Down that space. But I do think that, the fact that there are casters and half casters, and you actually touched on something a little bit here. This kind of ties into the bard thing a little bit. It is Tuesday, so you're probably going to be doing that more. But something I'm going to say, this is going to be my hot take for the episode.
Oh, okay.
And I'll
Bards are the best class?
I'm going to say
Bards best class?
No. And it's actually, it's not, my beef isn't with bards. My beef is with the fact that they've opted for bards to manifest as casters. I love the notion of a bard who is simply so inspiring through song and bravado and
okay.
Well, we're gonna
no. I want my bard casting fireball. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, I know that's what you want, but here's the thing. As a whole, I'm going to say I think far too much magic has been injected across the classes in Dungeons and Dragons.
You said that because of the Arcane Trickster.
Arcane Trickster is the bane of my existence, and the thing is a bard is kind of just an Arcane Trickster.
Yeah,
like you could say it the other way, I guess. An Arcane Trickster is just like a rogue who decided they should have been a bard.
But she should just go bard anyway. Why you bother?
Well, but it's totally a thematic thing. But in terms of that arcane space, I really think,
and I know why they did it. They just want everyone to have everything. Like,
well,
I think they even have a barbarian subclass that has arcane.
Well,
taps into their arcane.
They've got the new. I can't remember. It's basically a wild mage barbarian.
Yeah, you got your whatever Wizarker.
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind. I mean,
really,
kind of. I actually think if you were going to graft magic into a barbarian, doing it as a wild magic
makes the most sense.
Is kind of a cool. And the idea I think is that you're just your blood is so thoroughly boiling that like arcane
energy
is just.
I
arcing
don't know
off
much
of you.
about that subclass. So,
but all that to say, my complaint on the Arcane side, but as far as systems go, it's not so much the implementation of how Arcane functions in the 5th edition space. It's that way too many classes have some amount of access to the Arcane. It's intelligence is already a thoroughly diminished stat.
Oh, only wizard and artificer use it.
Yeah, and I think, quite frankly, I think any full casting class, there's no reason why they could not be.
Yeah, you were mentioning that. Like, hey, why don't you have a sorcerer be charisma or intelligence?
Well, and quite frankly, I'd even do away with the or. I would happily. I have no problem.
Or both.
Excuse me. I have no problem with the sorcerer being intelligence based. I don't think there's anything about the sorcerer thematics that require that. Charisma does not speak to someone's innate ability to play with the weave any more than intelligence does.
Yeah,
to me.
I don't. Yeah.
So I already think intelligence kind of has gotten the shaft. Intelligence is the antithesis of dex, basically.
Yeah, and dex is a god stat.
Right. I mean, like anyone can take dex and it's going to help them.
Yep.
So many classes can make intelligence their dump stat and it won't mean anything. Yeah. Yeah, we know 6. But so I mean, I think that's illustrative of the fact that the Arcane is supposed to be a manifestation, I think, of intellect fundamentally.
And because I think we were talking about this earlier, like here you have these amazing fighters able to take on dragons. What do the smart people do? Like
they think.
They think. And that's boring as shit. So this is giving the intelligent people a way to also, and what I love about Dungeons and Dragons, especially old school, is the fighter is always pretty okay. You know, they're always going to be good at battle. The wizard, where you have like one magic missile, then you're using your fucking sling.
Yeah.
And then, but if you're able to keep that guy alive, he can change reality.
Yeah, and I think especially as you get into higher and higher levels, and that curve even still exists in modern Dungeons and Dragons, you know. Yeah. But so I'd be interested to hear your take. Is it safe to say too many classes are? Is it safe to say too many classes are diddling the weave?
No, I don't think.
No,
I don't see a problem with it.
You're killing me here, man. You're killing me.
This might be our first disagreement in 18 episodes or whatever we're at now. No, I don't think it's a problem.
You don't think it's a problem that a rogue, without multi-classing, How can you not see that as a problem?
For one, it's you're acting like every character is going to randomly it's the weave exists around you at all times, right? Mm-hmm. So who's to say that you can't find ways to tap into it?
I completely agree. I think that's represented by multi-classing. That's represented by
the rogue is seen as a very. When I think rogues, I do think of intelligence.
I also don't disagree.
So why wouldn't they have like, oh man, I'm a street urchin. I got to find every resource I have in order to survive this hellish life I live.
Because if they're standing next to the wizard, they have just depleted the importance of that wizard.
There's a huge difference between an arcane trickster rogue and a freaking god wizard.
I mean,
there's no comparison, dude. Mage Hand might be slightly better, but I mean,
I'm saying the mechanical expression of a rogue being able to use a bonus action to utilize a wand is
that's pretty cool.
Think about this. But if you're intent on that,
yeah.
Imagine a battle playing out where the wizard is casting their one spell and the rogue is casting their spell, and they are breaking the game magically better.
No one can break the game like that.
If they're using a magical item, they can.
Oh shit, you're right.
And
sorry, my min-max brain just went overdrive. So I'm gonna exploit this in their future campaign. Sorry, dude.
No, I've already told you there will be no arcane tricksters. It's not happening. But this is my problem. Is that, again, one, I have a thematic issue with it. I have a thematic issue actually with.
Then does a paladin encroach on a cleric?
No, because that's your class. Your class is like if there was a subclass, a paladin subclass that suddenly allowed you to do all of the things that Well, I should not say all the things, but if there's a paladin subclass where pick any class pick the most opposite class of paladin.
Opposite class of paladin.
Yeah,
warlock, I guess.
Who's on the other side? Cool. So there's a paladin class where now.
Actually, a paladin warlock.
But you've subclassed or you've multi-classed.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking about subclassing from the paladin. You're not even leaving the paladin sphere, and now you're doing everything that is casting a shadow on an actual warlock. That's a problem. That's a design problem.
I don't, because a wizard can summon a demon, bind it to this plane, learn its true name, and has like that is freaking Arcane Trickster doesn't even come close to that.
Well, again, thematically, yes, but you start rolling dice and you watch the way that the action economy plays out. I guarantee that Arcane Trickster is going to rapidly out damage.
No,
yes, pure magical damage. An Arcane Trickster is going to out damage a wizard
with the wand, which is a limited resource with only a certain amount of charges. And as a DM, you can control that.
Well, you could also just not let Arcane Tricksters into your campaigns, but no, we're gonna agree to disagree here.
No, we're not. I'm right.
That's but I mean, Arcane Trickster is my personal pet peeve. I actually think I think I've got a very antiquated sense of what Dungeons and Dragons
Get with the times, old man.
should be. Get off my fucking lawn, you damn hipster. No, but where again, like where that barrier, the barrier between being capable of accessing arcane powers and not was a more robust thing. And I think what that did was exemplified those who stood on the arcane side of that fence.
I understand where you're coming from. I just don't think it's a problem. But who knows?
Again, there are many classes and subclasses that I think kind of encroach on that, and I certainly wouldn't remove them. The Arcane Trickster is the one that really grinds my gears.
Grind your gears. I think Wizard was just like they tried to make everyone happy.
I think they were like, the rogue who already has every skill with expertise. Now you know what we should do? Let them start stepping on the toes of every arcane class in the game.
You mean bards? You just described bards.
Then be a bard. That's my point.
So good.
My point is, don't be a rogue if you want to be a caster. Be a bard.
I gotta be a bard next campaign. I build up bards so much. Yeah, I have to be a bard.
You do love playing your bards.
I love playing bards.
Now, we need to drill into some of the finite questions that came along with this topic.
Yeah, Fraser, if you're still paying attention, bless your heart.
Yes.
But let's actually address the question.
Yeah.
And that's the mechanical stuff.
Yeah, the mechanical stuff and with a specific nod to, there's a couple things. Components.
Okay.
Spellcasting components.
Okay.
Oh, I just messed up. So spellcasting components.
Went aggressive on that pour.
And also kind of with a nod towards ritual casting.
I fucking love rituals.
I'm actually completely indifferent, but I do think there's some important things to be said about
this. Might be like our most conflicting episode ever. I'm enjoying this.
So, let's start with components, because I think that's a place that
we probably agree on components.
Yeah. I mean, my general thinking of components, for those who are not aware, there are basically a variety of components that go into casting a spell. I mean, maybe you need to speak to cast that spell. Maybe you need to do some fancy gestures.
VSM, verbal, semantic, material. Yep.
Yeah. And
is it material?
Material, yep.
Okay, good.
The material components are the ones that I place the least value in. Absolutely, as a DM, if you are stealthing and you try to cast a spell that has a verbal component, I'm going to ask you, does that have a verbal component?
That's never bitten me in the ass.
And if it does, I may have you fail your stealth check outright, depending on the circumstances.
Or roll.
Or I may have you roll, probably with disadvantage.
Right, I think that's what happens.
You're likely already rolling because you're trying to stealth. So I would just...
A paladin trying to be stealthy is not a good...
Yeah. But I think it's fair to say that if they're assigning a verbal component, it's not something that you can just go like there's an amount of injection into the verbal component that needs to exist.
Fun feat is to allow a
there may be.
I wonder, does Warcaster
Drop it. No, Warcaster's more of a concentration related.
Yeah, but you can use something else as a focus.
Yeah, but I don't think it has any
Okay,
impact on your
anyway.
ability to.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. If you guys at home know it, drop it in the comments.
Please.
Actually, while we're on that subject, hit us with that like, comment, and subscribe.
We're gonna get better at that shit at the beginning of these episodes.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it really, really short and sweet. Like, comment, subscribe. We're gonna keep right on it. We love you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
But so the verbal and somatic, I absolutely. If you are restrained,
yeah, you can't use your.
You can't do your fancy stuff.
Right.
If you are stealthing, you probably can't use a verbal component of your spell without subjecting yourself to being revealed.
Right.
Material is the place where and there's all sorts of memes specifically on the munitions front of like, hey man, how many areas do you have left? And the guy's like, we don't keep track of that at this table. And quite frankly, I think it's actually more of a blanket rule of cool. Mm-hmm. I want to be very clear. There are games, entire games, and there are times within games where that may be far more important.
And I think that's fine as long as that's because you're talking about like attrition rates.
Yes.
Which I enjoy that stuff very much. The only thing I'll say, like, if you're running a non-attrition, like, hey, we don't keep track of, I'll use arrows. You don't keep track of arrows, and all of a sudden, randomly, like, oh, by the way, we're now in a survival aspect, and we're keeping, like, it needs to be known that, okay.
Right.
As you leave this town, as you look back, you realize that you're not going to get resupplied for months and months and months. So it's very clear.
Yeah, I think if there's going to be segments of your game, we've talked about this, bringing kind of old school D&D,
which I think is a wonderful idea.
No, I really like the idea of using it as an encounter type or using it as a thematic element.
You go through a desert.
Yeah,
but
blah,
blah, blah.
In terms of, I do think that there is some value especially for high level spells.
Yeah,
and especially the opportunity to introduce that MacGuffin, where maybe a component for a spell, and this works brilliant for high level spells. It works really, really well for homebrewed spells.
Yes,
there might be some spell that is going to be a game changer.
Yeah, there's a spell that shows the weakness of the BBEG.
Right.
And, yeah, you have to have
and so then it's a side quest if they want to go pursue it and get that material component so they can cast that spell. Maybe it's some variant of just for shits and giggles, it's a variant of detect magic, let's say.
Okay.
And
and it highlights the weakness. Yeah. I like
whatever the case is, you are out there and you need this component. That's a great way to use the material components in a compelling and exciting way. In the sense of like, oh man, I need 3 pubic hairs from a fully grown draft horse to cast this spell.
That's why I always care. That's why we always have horses, because we go through that.
Well, I know that's why you keep them on hand, but none of them are draft horses. So you guys, I haven't told you.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yet.
Well, that goes our whole strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I was waiting for the right time to spring it on you. No, but I mean, I don't think there are many players who sit down going, I want to create an Excel spreadsheet of what components I'm keeping on hand.
I guess you have that rare character, that rare player who enjoys it.
And the thing is if there's someone who loves that, and like I said,
rare,
I think that's actually far more archetypal of an older school space, because resources really were a tension driving factor in those playing out. At our table, in general, I am not concerned with material components.
No.
If it's a material component I'm going to be concerned with, it's something that I will be very explicit about. Well, and I think there are some. Your diamond is a great example.
Yeah, so there's 2 things, because Ariel is consciously trying. So what she uses the components for is role play. So it's like, oh, what does this spell look like when you cast it? Well, here you're given what you're holding while casting this spell.
And I love that. I think that's a great way of using it as a resource rather than it being a chore to manage.
Yeah.
And again, I think in the interest of sitting down at the table and playing and telling cool stories and having a great time, being in a space where you go, oh crap, I don't have any adult draft horse pubic
You
hairs.
don't have any guano or like I remember that being a pretty popular.
And like if in every other way you've prepared for that space,
Right.
and again that's going to change from table to table.
But yeah, I one more thing though,
Yeah.
because you also mentioned the resurrection spell involves you need a diamond, but the diamond needs to be worth X amount of gold.
Right.
That I think is really important because there's spells that come to mind when you come to that is resurrection, which should be something,
Yes.
right? Because that you're saying it means something. Also, conjuring different like a demon. If you want to conjure a demon, that I think that takes.
And again, I think there are plenty of spells that carry so much thematic weight that it's reasonable to say, do you have the things you need for this spell? I'll go a step further.
Okay.
Something like a resurrection spell.
Down.
We're gonna have some conversations in this.
Well,
in this
let
space.
me know before that
No,
comes to a thing because I've already prepared for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and quite frankly, I think it's a better way of running resurrection. Is run as effectively a skill challenge.
No, I'm fine with that.
It's been done to great success many times.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But effectively, I like I said, that's one of the places where I really do think saying, "Do you have your component?" Right. And again, it's a great way thematically to say if you're running it as a skill challenge where Kel as a character, say he's going to resurrect, might be able to tap his companions to aid him in this resurrection, that they could contribute other elements to
like the Goku Spirit Bomb, and I'm sure you're a big DBZ fan. Whatever.
You see, Bards, Dragon Ball Z, like we're
anyway.
we're basically not even friends in this moment.
I know, right? But yeah, you all gather your energy together to
yeah, I think that's a far more meaningful way for that spell to play out than just go like, I cast it, and I mean, I completely get that could seem jilting to go, it's part of what I do. I've got it right here. I've got all the components.
As long as it's known ahead of time. But this comes also to trust and respect. If you're going to make that call at the table, I might give you like and you'd be like, hey, come on, man. You're saving someone from the afterlife.
From permadeath.
Their soul right now is trying to be grabbed by these other gods or goddesses.
Right.
I'd be like, okay. Well, let's roll with it.
Yeah.
But
and I don't think there are many places. Again, to me, one of the big ones, just because of the thematic weight, is the resurrection of a fallen ally. I mean, you hit on some of the other. I mean, like again, the process of dragging a demon from the abyss to the material and going like, all right, I'm going to do what I can to control you, but worst case scenario, I'm going to get protection from evil going, and just let you run amok, I guess.
Right. God, there's a lot of fun things you could do with that,
yeah.
which, I don't know if Ariel will ever go that route. If she does, man, she's going to turn dark, man.
There's
some cool things you can do with that.
There's some interesting stuff that's going to be coming down the pipeline with her subclass.
But I think another thing that's super important about those monetary or time, there's like teleportation circles. I don't know if that's quite the wording that the spell is. It takes a long time to make one.
Right.
And that's really, really important because if you don't have that, players are going to be making teleportation circles everywhere.
Right. And I love that you hit on time, and I think that's a great example.
Yeah.
Is time is effectively the crux of the ritual spell. A ritualization of a spell for, again, I think most people who are tuning in probably already have an idea of what a ritualized spell is, but effectively, instead of spending a spell slot, you can spend a longer period of time,
10 minutes, I think,
to invoke that spell. Some spells have this attribute, some do not.
It depends on your class.
Some do not.
Yeah, right. Some of these, no kidding. And it depends on your class too. This is where wizard, I think, is really shines. Is either spell book versus like cleric, who is a ritual caster, but you have to have that spell prepared for the day in order to use it as a ritual. Sorcerer is even worse because you can't change your spells every day like a cleric can.
Yeah, and I think that's really the wizard. That's why the wizard is the king of utility, because they basically will have access to more rituals.
Yeah.
And so many of the ritualized spells are utility spells. Some of them are just flat out useless most of the time. But that one moment where you go, I'm harnessing this and I don't need to exhaust the resource. But let's talk about rituals, because I think you think we're going to lock horns on this. I'm not anti-ritual at all.
Okay.
I am all for ritual. I absolutely see why players would like them. I see why a caster would love
Oh my gosh, yes.
being able to ritualize their spells. My only note on rituals, and this is to DMs, not to players. Well, it's to both, I guess. Players, keep in mind, because I think DMs should be keeping this in mind as well, that generally speaking, there is a resource cost for casting a spell of any kind.
Spell slots, yeah.
Generally, that will be spell slots. We talked about if you're micromanaging material components, it could be the material components as well. And it's entirely incumbent on the DM, however, to make time a valuable resource. If time isn't a valuable resource, and there are times where it won't be. If you're sitting in a tavern and someone goes like, I want to spend 10 minutes. I just want to detect magic here and just make sure everything's cool.
Yeah, why not?
Now, unless you're sitting in where the Cowled Wizard's going to show up and arrest you for using the arcane unlicensed. Those sons of guns. But
are we ever going to end up there? That's going to be real bad.
You're going to have to take that up with Katarina, I think.
We have yet to explore that side of the world, and I'm scared.
That's going to be
Cal's not going to do well.
That's going to literally be a different world.
Cal's not going to do well in that world.
But great. That's a space where, in 10 minutes, you guys have barely, you drink half your ale. Who cares?
Right.
But I think there's a lot of DMs out there who are going, these rituals are killing me. Like, how do I adjudicate against, they cast 4 rituals. It took 40 minutes. That's exactly the problem is you have not made time a resource with any value.
So that's a counter to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't even think it shouldn't be thought of as like, hey, they keep using these. It should be thought of as there are actors in the world who are also doing things. And 40 minutes is a lot of time.
That's true.
For them to do things.
World. Yeah.
And so a great example, like right now, you guys being in the Shattered Canyon. You guys are well aware that you are not high on the food chain in the Shattered Canyon.
No, evidently not. No, we fucked some shit up, dude.
You've handled your shit. But I think the primary predator that you guys have kind of...
The wyverns, for sure.
And I think it's become increasingly apparent that time may well be a factor. They're intelligent. And if you give an intelligent enemy time, they will utilize that. It's not just.
So are we gonna like water in a wyvern and they're gonna have like ballistas set up?
Well, they set that awesome ship trap for you guys.
No, that was just supposed to be retarded.
No, but so here's the thing: is all I would say is rituals. I think are great. It's a really cool resource. I think it's a great way for players to feel like they can engage with some of their spells without depleting very valuable resources, resources that are going to be in demand should they find themselves in the shit. And it's totally reasonable for a wizard to go, sorry guys, I don't want to cast anything. I want to be ready in case the shit hits the fan.
Yeah. And that's what a wizard would do too, because they're so smart.
Exactly. So the ritual basically allows them to kind of cut that corner. It's important though as DMs to understand that time is the resource they're spending there. And if you have not placed any value on time, they will cast ritual after ritual after ritual, and there will be no ramifications for that. And
I'm just trying to think, what would be quick? Like, hey, let's say you have that wizard who's like, oh, I can save spell slots. What would you be like, okay, they're starting a ritual. What would be your answer to it?
Well, I think if they're doing it in let's call it a more or less hostile environment. A dungeon. And so here, this is a holdover from old school D&D, and this is an important 10 minutes is not an arbitrary measurement of time.
Okay.
Generally, if you were tracking time old school style through a dungeon crawl, you would have a die 6. And it would be 6, then you turn it to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and that's an hour.
Okay.
every 10 minutes that's gone by.
That's interesting.
So 10 minutes is an interval in which you go, something is changing within this environment.
Dang, that's cool.
And so with that, you're going, cool, you want to spend 10 minutes casting your ritual? Great. But the whole, and the thing is any savvy party knows that when they hear the dice roll beyond my tower, I'm rolling on a random encounter table.
Yeah.
I'm rolling on. So then the question is a level 1 spell slot worth it?
Mm-hmm.
Or is a potential fight that's going to deplete a lot more than a level 1 spell slot? And that's maybe you don't have a fight at all. Maybe I roll and I go, you cast the ritual, no problem.
Dice.
And that is the beauty of
it's a risk reward thing.
It's a risk reward. And it's not, I don't think modern tables are thinking about.
I didn't think about that either.
Rituals in this same way.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that's because a lot of DMs are not placing that value on time. Now, again, when you're in a let's call it a dangerous environment, a dungeon is a great example. Let's stay with the Shattered Canyon because that's where you guys are at right now.
Yeah, tell me what you're doing right now.
You're definitively in a dangerous environment. As time is elapsing, I need to be considering what are the hazards in the Shattered Canyon doing relative to not just time passing, time in which flying men on a weird ship just came into this canyon and the whole canyon, again,
We've been blowing shit up left and right.
Some are reacting more intelligently than others.
Right.
But certainly there has to be the consideration. And whether that's simply, I am rolling on a random counter table, maybe you're going to have a fight. There could be a more concrete implication. Let's say, for instance, as you're moving through this Shattered Canyon, the thing that you're seeking, in this case, you're actually seeking wyvern eggs.
Right.
The likelihood that 10 minutes is going to make all the difference there? Probably not. But let's say something that you were seeking was more finite by time. You could flat out end the potential for success in your objective because time simply runs out. I mean, and I think as a DM, it's not a good feeling as a player to get to the end and the DM goes, sorry, it took you guys 11 days to get to this thing and you had 3 days to do it. That doesn't feel good. If they go like, we didn't know we were on a clock, like, you know. So I wouldn't advise blindsiding your party with going, hey, I had a timer running and you know, but there are all sorts of other things that can be happening in that space.
Right.
That aren't inherently pertinent to what your fundamental goal is. Now, I think when you're talking about applying value to time, there's all sorts of great opportunities to go, you guys have arrived at the Shattered Canyon, but for totally different reasons. Let's say you arrived at the Shattered Canyon because the king of some weird kingdom who, if he does not have a wyvern like to ride as his steed, he can't assume the crown. You know, his father is on his deathbed and he goes, the coronation, my father is, I am succeeding my father in 4 days. I need that egg.
Sure.
Cool. I have just added an immense amount of value to time.
Right.
How readily are the players going to go, I'm gonna do the, like, at least they're thinking about time.
Yeah, is now a thing. Yeah,
and
so you're not exploiting it.
Yeah, so it's a situation where you can instantiate an entire mission that has a countdown where you're going, time is of the essence. But even if you haven't done that, and I don't think you should have the outcome of, hey, there's a shot clock without telling your players there's a shot clock.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good.
No.
But you can either instantiate a shot clock so they understand and watch immediately how the rituals dry up. They go, okay, time's a factor. They're thinking about it.
Right.
Or you can go, you've got all the time in the world. But that doesn't mean things aren't getting more difficult the longer you're here.
As
that
you do your ritual, you hear the growls from the next room get louder.
Exactly. And the thing is so many times, because you're generally sitting with savvy individuals who understand the game, when they hear that die 20 roll behind a screen as they're casting their ritual, they're going, okay, there's a price. I'm paying a price here.
Yeah.
And that may be all that needs to be exchanged. They simply understand that there is a value there. So again,
Yeah.
I love rituals,
Yeah.
but I think if you don't assign a value to time, your players are smart.
Yeah.
If they're some of them.
Wow, you just said that we're smart. I'm a smart boy.
No, but especially if we're talking about a full caster, likely they're smart.
Yeah.
Or very charismatic, apparently.
And can play the guitar like a motherfucker.
Oh, Jesus. It's a but
well,
so that's the thing is let them understand that a ritual is not I'm no longer paying any price whatsoever to cast this. You're just paying a different price.
no, I really, yeah, and I love that you're always saying that you're communicating in some way about that. What I'm thinking is, I love rituals, so, and Wizard is by far the best ritual caster. If you, there's a feat called Ritual Caster. Yeah, I know.
It was some big brain.
I don't make up the names, man. I'm just here to tell you.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you take that, in my next character, I'm strongly thinking about taking that feat.
Yeah. Rituals are really awesome.
But I would say like, don't think of them as negatives. Perhaps now if we want to talk about Lehman's Tiny Hut, we can talk about the Tiny Hut. But like Detect Magic, I think is by far the most common ritual spell we see at our table.
I think it's a very common,
and it's so good because it's a way to communicate more about your world. So I'm trying to appeal to DMs on this.
Yeah, I this is what I was going to pivot to. So I'm really glad you're going there.
Yeah, appeal to your DM like, hey, use this tool that I'm using to communicate more about your world to me. Because like we've talked about, exploration is really hard to get into. So why would you tax your player to learn more about your world?
I think that is a really strong argument for not punishing that space. And again, I think that is entirely environment dependent. I mean, if you're in the Shattered Canyon, if Aster decides she wants to use Detect Magic as a ritual,
yeah,
I can't change the fact that you guys all know you're in a hostile environment,
right?
But I 100% agree, and think about this, DMs, that there are times where they're casting Detect Magic, which is your caster saying, I want to know more about this space. I want to know more about this mystery. I want to know more about the world that you've given me.
They're asking for this. Yeah.
And if it's not a hostile space, like if it's a space where like legitimately it's a good space to explore in, don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
Right.
And that's not to say instantiate some magical trigger that they can now actuate on if it's not already there.
Right.
But absolutely, I completely agree that rituals are a great way, because so many of them are utility, for the party to engage with the world that we are instantiating while still feeling capable of pushing on into that next room where that fight's coming.
Right.
So it's like, that fight's coming. They want to engage with this world that, they found some cool thing. We have our hand on that dial, on that ratchet. Be cognizant of the times in which your players are trying to be exploitative with utilizing those rituals.
Right.
And obviously there are times where that you may be going, I've got to instantiate something to dissuade this behavior.
And that's, I was just thinking, like, if they're doing if a player is trying to legitimately break the game and really giving you a hard time about it, talk about it out of the game. Like, hey man, what are you trying to accomplish with all this? Like, I'm trying to get every advantage I can. You're slowing down the game. This doesn't need to happen. You're taking away the enjoyment from the other people at the table.
Right. Yeah, and I think rituals, the nice thing, one thing I really like about rituals from a running the game standpoint, and this is a very like nuts and bolts running the game. When someone says I'm casting a ritual, to me, immediately what I hear is we're going to start that process, and that's the immediate point where I know I'm going to pivot to another character, because you're spending 10 minutes doing that.
Which, yeah, that's very true.
And so and you'll see on rovers, you'll
Yep.
see almost always if someone starts casting a ritual. Now maybe I just pivoted to them and they're casting a ritual, and I'll just go, okay, the 10 minutes has elapsed,
Right.
or I'll go, oh shit,
Right.
Whatever.
Purple worms everywhere.
But if I 8 of them, they're generally territorial,
But not
but they're
today.
making an exception for you. But no, if I've been on a scene with someone and they start casting a ritual and they decide, it is a really, really great place, because it's such a natural place thematically to pivot to what the rest of the party's doing if they're split. But even if they're not split, it could just be, a great example is Aster starts casting a ritual and I go, great, okay, you begin casting that ritual, that starts playing out. While that's happening,
Right.
what are you guys doing? Because we need to account for 10 minutes. And as a DM, we don't want to shoehorn the rest of the party into assuming the fact that they're just standing there watching her cast this ritual.
Right.
Some great RP takes place in those
yes,
spaces.
yeah.
Some great exploration takes place in those spaces. Sometimes that party is fed up with sitting around while rituals
And then
are
that
being
character
cast.
can be like, hey, dude, we got enough Phantom Steeds. We don't need another Phantom Steed.
You never have enough Phantom Steeds. No, but there are a number of things throughout the game, and there maybe is an episode on this on obvious DM cues, but one of them, certainly one that I hone in on,
great
is
conversation.
the casting of a ritual where that player basically knows, like, I need to be focused on this for 10 minutes. Is the first thing that goes to my head is, okay, cool, they're casting this ritual.
Right.
Probably I'm going, what are they trying to accomplish? Generally, that's reasonably obvious. Sometimes they're doing something zany. But then it's a great place to segue and go, boom, what's happening over here? And it's a great way, like I said, to not just go 10 minutes passes. You can see a different aspect of what's happening in the world somewhere else. Or again, what's happening just with the other characters, what's going on.
Yeah,
in their head.
read the room. Read the room, baby.
Read the room, baby. No, I think. I'm not sure how much. There's so much to be said on the Arcane. It's a difficult one to.
We never talked about how bars are amazing, and
I think we kind of talked about how they're like, they'd be more amazing if they weren't casting spells.
no,
Like,
no.
I'm talking about.
No.
I think you think I'm trying to strip something away from the bards. I'm talking about they've got their own thing, but it's not magic. It's something totally.
They do have their own way, but they have just such a unique way of interacting with the weave. Whatever.
They don't need to interact with the weave. No one needs. Only wizards, full blown, no multi-class wizards interact with the weave.
Well, if you have a problem with bards, you have a problem with warlocks.
Why would I have a problem with warlocks?
Because
Warlocks are awesome.
Well, yeah, so are bards, but like, how do they access the weave? Through
They're accessing the weave in the exact same way that arguably any divine class is accessed.
but it's not. It's arcane. It's not divine.
Yeah, but if you go back far enough, there's not that distinction. It's just a matter of who's.
I'm sorry. We're playing the world of.
Okay.
But anyway.
Well, anyways, warlocks awesome. Bards not so much.
Or the most amazing class.
No, I think that pretty much wraps us up. I mean, I really hope that we hit on the.
I hope so. This is such a broad content.
It really is. There's so much to be said on the
Arcane.
Arcane.
Talk about focuses. I think they asked about that as well. But
you want to hit on focuses really quick?
I don't know what to hit on. Like,
I mean, as someone who kind of you kind of wear your focus full time.
that's the glory of clerics and paladins is we wear focuses.
Right.
Versus a wizard who either needs to have a focus or have a hand free.
Yeah. I mean, and again, to me,
Let's take Warcaster, which is dope.
yeah, I don't see. That's not a rules as written that I see any reason to fudge on. I think it's a completely reasonable thing that
I think it needs to
you're channeling
happen
that.
because the economy.
Yeah.
Like you kind of need it. Otherwise, it can get pretty bad.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually of all of the questions, definitely the two that seemed the most pressing had to do with kind of the component aspect,
Yeah,
and
the rituals.
the ritual aspect. The
Yeah.
ritual, I think that's one that a lot of DMs do struggle with. And I think
You would if I was a ritual caster. I tell you what, man.
I would just roll on a die 4 table where 1 through 4 is a combat encounter.
should also make me happy. So I just
Well, yeah, you
sometimes
just
I'll be like, I'm bored. I can cast a ritual right now.
I'm gonna cast a ritual. But the problem is what I would have is I'd have like 6 tables, and each time it would start out as like something totally mundane.
Rats
and
and-
you'd be
yeah.
like, oh, okay, cool. If all I have to do is fight some rats to cast my ritual,
Right.
no problem. But then I literally one of them is
Ramp
going to
up.
be 8 purple worms. That's what it's going to be. So
But then I become Paul Atreides, and I'd, the sleeper must awaken.
you're gonna get eaten before you awaken. No, I think that pretty much does it for us here. As far as Maple Dragoon, Jay Frazier, I really hope that we touched on the questions
Hope
that you
so.
had. Drop it in the comments. If we didn't, there's
Or
no
further questions. Maybe we,
Yeah.
totally know.
there is nothing to stop us from taking a second stab or just engaging more in the comments on the subject.
Yeah.
I really do hope that that we hit on them here today. Beyond that, if you guys are enjoying Split Screen D&D, the like, comment, subscribe means the world to us. Costs you nothing, and really does. I mean, it's literally the currency by which we do business. At this point, I think pretty much we always have to be shouting out. If you guys are enjoying this content, go see what we do in real time. Check out the Rovers campaign. And again, love it or hate it. We'd just love to hear what your thoughts are on what we're doing at the table. We obviously love it. We've been doing it for a long time, the way we do it. But everyone's got their own thing. Other than that, I think it's time that we head on out here. And tying into the Arcane is a very, very difficult tie-in.
Yeah.
But if you would, you want to take us out?
I'll take us out.
Don't spend 10 minutes, but if you'd be so kind as to show the audience the coveted "The World Is Yours" ritual. Get it?
I hate you so much right now.
I'm drinking beer while he does it.
Or I'm all out of beer.
I thought for sure you were going to pivot into Bum Should I?
That's exactly what I was going to do. That's going to exactly do Bum Bum Should I. No, I can't do Bum Bum Should I. World is yours, bitches.